Recording in progress.
Honorable members, good evening and welcome to the meeting. Good evening to the Speaker of Parliament, the Chairperson of the NCOP, honorable members who are part of this Joint Standing Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament. My name is Molapi Soviet Lakhanyane, the co-chairperson of this committee. Let me take this opportunity and extend warm and fraternal greetings to the co-chair, Honorable Ndlovu S, and welcome the STP and his team to the meeting. Just before we go to the agenda of the meeting, honorable members, I have been advised that, or maybe let me say, I announced in the last meeting that we will be meeting PAMET on Friday, the 12th of September. It's a physical meeting, and there are those matters that Honorable Suisa raised regarding the program of the committee, which we will also deal with on Friday before we start with the PAMET meeting. So PAMET has requested that the meeting must be exclusive, and I have requested the support team to check with the legal section of Parliament whether we will not be in breach of any law or policy if we are going to shut the public out of that meeting. So I'm going to request Cindy, if we have secured anybody from the legal team to present that matter, just for members to understand if it is allowed for us to have a meeting with PAMET excluding the public, or if it is not possible, so that when they come, they should come knowing that it is not possible for us to exclude the public from the meeting. Good evening, Cindy, and all those who are part of your support team. Can I check if we have secured anybody from the legal services?
Good evening, co-chairpersons, members and guests. Yes, Advocate Frankie Jenkins, Senior Parliamentary Legal Advisor, who drafted the legal opinion for us, is online to take you through a check.
Is Advocate Frankie? You say it's Advocate Frankie?
Frankie Jenkins, Chairperson.
Okay.
Jenkins, yes.
I'm struggling to hear you properly. Maybe.
Apologies, Chair. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, it's Advocate Frankie Jenkins.
Jameson.
Jenkins, yes.
Okay. Advocate Frankie, good evening and welcome. You can go ahead. You can go ahead and present the legal opinion that you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members, Honourable Speaker, good evening, Mr. Secretary, my boss Suraya Adhikari and my other colleagues in this meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to present the legal view from our office. We received the request, as indicated by the Chairperson on Friday, asking us whether it would be regular in terms of the rules and the Constitution to close the meeting. As members are aware, and as we indicate in the opinion, the default position for committees of Parliament is to have open committees. It's said so specifically in respect of the NA and the NCOP. Nothing is said about joint committees in the Constitution, but I think considering how Parliament is analyzed, or how Parliament's compliance with constitutional obligations are analyzed in courts through jurisprudence, I think it's just pure logic that a joint committee will be subject to the same constitutional requirement, which is an open committee to ensure transparency and accountability, which is set out in the founding values of the Constitution, which I refer to in the opinion, Honourable Chairperson. So, Chair, our vantage point is then the two provisions that deal with the NA and the NCOP, in other words, which sets out that the committees of the houses must be open for the public, including the media, unless it's reasonable and justifiable in a democratic society, in an open and democratic society, to close those meetings. So there has been instances where meetings have been closed, and there are certain committees which are closed through the operation of legislation, most notably the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence. In terms of the rules, the Mediation Committee is a joint committee. It's closed in terms of the rules for obviously for operational purposes in that regard. When it comes to other committees, and then specifically the Joint Standing Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament, that provision applies, which is it reasonable and justifiable to exclude the media, the public, including the media, from a meeting in an open and democratic society. Now, Chairperson, the rule that we refer to is Joint Rule 103, which sets out that test and actually has a two-prong analysis of whether a committee can be closed. So while I'm going through this, Chair, maybe it's just useful to keep in mind that we have to justify the closing of a meeting. So the default position is always an open meeting, unless it's by legislation or rules, it's closed by default, but that's in very few examples which I've just mentioned. So, Chair, the Joint Rule 103 then indicates that if a committee must be closed in terms of legislation, Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence, or a House resolution or a rule, mediation committee, or a resolution, then of course the committee can exclude the public, including the media. That is not the case in this instance. The other examples that are mentioned in Joint Rule 103 is whether it's the content of the discussion in the committee affects a particular person, whether it's confidential, and whether the harm can be provided. Let me just open my so, Chair, I went through that. If we look at the opinion on paragraph 6, if there's a matter that's a private nature that's prejudicial to a particular person. So here again, we're looking at a specific person. We're discussing someone. Maybe it's a report of what someone has done. In this instance, the only thing I could find in the two presentations, one is the general presentation, sort of the background of PARMET, and then the other one is the specific actuarial presentation of how it is funded and how its business model operates. Now, I didn't find anything in there, Chairperson, but our office didn't find anything in that which is specific prejudicial to a particular person. Neither did we find anything that's protected under parliamentary privilege or for any other reason privilege in terms of law. In this instance, one can only think of an example of client attorney privilege and so forth. Is this matter confidential in terms of legislation, which is another area which Joint Rule 103 considers? This issue is not confidential in terms of legislation. And the last point in Rule 103 is whether it's of such a nature that it's confidential treatment, that its confidential treatment is for any reason, reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society. Chair, that's the test that one must look at. And as I said, we have not found compliance with that test. So in our view, Chair, this meeting should not be excluding the public nor the media, of course. The only particular person that's mentioned is a juristic person. It's which is MedScheme, which is operating this medical aid scheme in terms of the Medical Schemes Act. Chair, in the opinion, I also indicate that we haven't found anything in the presentations or in the report to the Joint Standing Committee that deals with anything pertaining to protection of personal information. And one can actually add in that regard that even if it does deal with personal matters, one must always ask the question whether that personal matter cannot be then discussed, because we are discussing this report, or we are sitting in the committee, or we're dealing with these presentations because of constitutional obligation to deal with them. So when you have that constitutional obligation, of course, it will override other areas of privacy if an act allows that. And we've seen that in a recent court case of the Corruption Watch that dealt with the appointment of the commissioners for the Gender Commission. So, Chair, that is on the substance. On the procedure, how to do this, Rule 103.2, Joint Rule 103.2 sets out that if the committee wants to consider, let's say, consider this advice and want to know whether to close the meeting or to exclude the public or not, there are two ways of doing it. Either the chairperson of the committee, or in this case, both chairpersons, will have to decide to close the meeting, and then the committee can decide, once it starts with its meeting, to say, let's open this meeting. It is not confidential. It is not sensitive matters. It is not matters that fall under the test of Joint Rule 103 or the constitutional provisions. That's the one way. So you can close the meeting and the committee can decide to open it. Another way would be for the chair to close the meeting from the beginning, only for the purpose for the committee to decide. And the committee will then decide, let's close this meeting or let's not close this meeting. So, Chair, that's the process that can be followed. The advice is on the opinion, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present the opinion. That's all from me.
Thank you so much, Senior Legal Advisor. I think you have brilliantly presented the matter. It's very clear to members that the request does not comply with the provisions, and number two, that there is an option which allows the co-chairs to decide to close the meeting at its start, and then once the meeting is opened, the committee members can decide. So can I get the opinions of the committee members? And I want us to confine ourselves to one matter, whether you want to advise that we close the meeting, and then once PARMET has made its intentions to present, we can decide whether we open it or we continue with a closed meeting? Honorable members, or alternatively, I don't know what honorable members feel. If you think let's take the advice and decide towards Friday, I'm still okay with it. But I see there are hands here, 5 hands. Listen to the order in which I'm noting them. Number 1 is Honorable Suisa. Number 2 is Honorable Van Rooyen. Number 3 is the Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Papane. Number 4 is Honorable Hamsinger. And number 5, okay, let me do it. Number 5 is Cameron. And then number 6 is Honorable Mkalipi. And the last will be the Speaker. In that order. Honorable Suisa.
No, thank you, Chair, and greetings to everyone. And thank you, Advocate Jenkins, for your speedily response to the request from the committee and the advice that you're giving. And it's very soothing, Chair, that we are even given the rules and being made aware that there are no particular, but the same rules also need to apply to joint standing committees. But Chair, when I look at the program and whatever PAMED is going to present to the committee, there's nothing confidential there. The public needs to know how their money is spent, because at the end of the day, the same money that you are paying for medical aid is the money that comes from taxpayers. So it doesn't make sense that PAMED doesn't want to make it public, that the public and even any other person, even members of parliament, are interested to hear what PAMED has to say pertaining some of the issues that they will be presenting. Even an opportunity for all other members of PAMED to understand how the body actually works. So it doesn't make sense that they would request, unless, Chair, there's something that they are trying to hide and they don't want the public to know about it. But I listened very carefully to Advocate Jenkins, and honestly speaking, I myself went through the program and tried to find out, after you announced, Chair, that PAMED wants a closed meeting, I went through the program and tried to find out, is there any confidential, is there any issue from the presentation that is going to be put that is of a national security, that is going to threaten, maybe cause an uproar in South Africa, because sometimes we do close meetings because we don't want to open up to find out that the public is in an uproar out there. So there's nothing that threatens the national security. And I would strongly advocate that the meeting should be open, that public should know what's happening in PAMED. And because if we are going to allow for a closed meeting, Chair, it means that we are going to allow for PAMED to publish certain things and not publish certain things, which means that the public cannot trust Parliament to say, you can't even trust us with a simple thing of a medical aid. And you allow PAMED to actually move forward and request and make demands that they must have closed meetings. So we cannot find ourselves setting presidency where the presidency is not needed, Chair. So the meeting needs to be open to the public. The meeting needs to be open to members of parliament and legislature that are members of PAMED, so that they fully understand what is happening in PAMED. Everybody is waiting for that meeting. And when you tell people that there's a possibility that it's a closed meeting, they ask you why. What is PAMED? What does PAMED want to hide? We want to know what's happening there. We want to understand how the system works. Because one of the issues, Chair, is that the medical aid is too expensive. So we need to understand why is it so expensive and all of those things. So I myself, Chair, would push that the meeting should be an open meeting to the public so that the public understand what's going on. Thank you very much.
Honorable Van Rooyen.
Thank you very much, Chair, and a very good evening to all in attendance, especially the executive leadership of the two houses of Parliament. And I think it's appropriate for me to start by welcoming the legal opinion from our legal team. Highly appreciated. Chair, my concern is the process that is being followed and the timing of the advice. I'm raising this because, you know, our processes in Parliament have been subjected to robust scrutiny through the constitutional democracy provision, especially through the Constitutional Court. We have been found wanting in terms of how do we process certain issues, including issues of stakeholder participation, you know. So PARMET as a stakeholder, I think it was given an indication that it might have been followed a certain process to qualify for either an open participation in an open committee meeting or a closed committee meeting. And that's why it's important for us as committee members to understand the process that has been followed to process this request of PARMET. And we will have to juxtapose that to the advice that we have just received. Because obviously, this advice, if it was correctly timed, it's supposed to have been considered when the request was submitted. So as PARMET is properly advised to say, if you want to qualify for this, this is the process that you should follow. I'm not sure where I'm sitting now, if that particular engagement was that robust, you know. I'm raising all these things, Chair, because I don't want PARMET tomorrow to feel that as a Parliament committee, we are now all of a sudden misusing or abusing the powers assigned to us. And obviously, if you listen to the advice of the legal team, it puts the onus of that determination to the leadership of the joint committee, more especially yourself and your co-chairperson. So I'm not sure if that process was properly exhausted for us to be where we are. And if not, maybe because we still have Advocate Jenkins in attendance, what should be done? Because ideally, PARMET should have been advised from the word-go that this is the process that you must follow. And due process as guided by the legislation, of course, was to be followed thereafter to determine if this meeting is going to take place or is going to take place in the nature they are requesting or not. And the timing part, Chair, where I'm concerned is Tuesday today, and this meeting is supposed to take place on Friday. And I know usually institutions or entities like Abu PARMET, they prepare things in advance in terms of traveling, logistical, aspects, you know. So I'm not sure how to deal with that situation now, and how to in fact dealing with it in such a way that we are not seen to be people who don't understand what we are doing, because we are a committee of Parliament and the Parliament has made this law. So we should be obviously leading by example in terms of advising stakeholders how they should obviously take advantage of these processes, you know. So that's my only worry, Chair, and I fully agree with the content of the advice, because I looked into the presentation myself. I didn't find anything confidential or anything that will definitely compromise the operation of a PARMET, you know. So, but I'm just concerned about how do we process this thing and the timing, processing as guided by the legislation, as advised by our legal team, but also as outlined in the rules of Parliament. Thank you, Chair.
No, Honorable Van Rooyen, I think you are raising a very valid point, and we must not miss the dimension that you are raising in the meeting. I think what we should do is to get Advocate Jenkins back to explain whether at the time Pamet made the request, is there any provision or any expectation that they could have been advised that for you to be granted permission, this is how you can make a request, and then you will get the approval. But secondly, this is not for the senior legal advisor, it's for you as honorable members. When we go to that meeting, are we looking at the presentation that Pamet will be making? Or are we looking at the confidential matters that we ourselves as members may raise in that meeting? Because I remember we discussed this matter, and I would want you to come back, Honorable Swiss and Honorable Van Rooyen, to express your views about the meeting which is going to happen. Let's forget about the presentation that Pamet is going to make. Yourselves, not only the two of you, but as the totality of the Joint Standing Committee. Do you by any chance have confidential issues that you are going to raise in that meeting? I'm going to allow the advocate, and then we will then take the deputy chief whip, but I'm going to give you a chance later, Honorable Swiss and Van Rooyen, to come back to this matters. And the question that I ask still stands, whether, and maybe it can help us to simplify the proceedings, is whether do we start by closing the meeting, or maybe even allow Pamet to present reasons why they will want that meeting closed. And when we have had them, and it will be good for us because we will be going to the Friday meeting already having received the legal opinion, and maybe also secure Advocate Jenkins to be part when the meeting starts, so that if Pamet raises extraordinary reasons, we can be advised whether the meeting should stand closed or if we open it. On Advocate Jenkins.
Chairperson, thank you again. Let me just get some light here. Chair, I think the two issues sort of overlap. The process that we're following, of course, we got the request for a legal opinion. It came from the board of Pamet through, namely, the chairperson of the board, which is the deputy speaker. And in terms of procedure, it actually followed what I consider, or what I became accustomed to in Parliament as the normal procedure. You get a request to close the meeting. We provide a legal opinion, and then when the meeting starts, that meeting which was now requested to close, that is when, and I agree with the proposal, Chair, if I understand you correctly, to say, let's give Pamet an opportunity to justify their request. And one can do that in a closed meeting, and the committee can then decide, well, no, we're opening this committee. That's one alternative. The other alternative is to say, well, we are going to open the meeting, but when we get to something that might be confidential in terms of legislation or specific to a person and prejudicial to that person, we're asking Pamet just to pause, and then we close the meeting for that purpose. Chair, I want to also just actually align myself to the position which was said earlier that when it comes to oversight and accountability for Parliament's finances, there's a huge interest in this matter, simply because Parliament is the overseer of government spending. And the question is always there, who oversees Parliament? So it's the Joint Committee that oversees Parliament. and then obviously the houses that adopts the reports afterwards. So when the joint committee, this joint standing committee, closes its doors to the public, then it attracts quite a lot of attention, which is not always positive, Chair. So, but that's a different matter, whether it's positive or not. The question is whether it's legally correct. So, Chair, to ensure that we're not throwing what people would say the baby out with the bathwater, it is procedural correct, and we did it with the communications not too long ago when the Post Office of South Africa was presenting their turnaround strategy, to give the presenter an opportunity. We can close the meeting for that, to say what is it that irks you, or what concerns you, that you need to close this meeting. And it doesn't, of course, one mustn't be unnecessarily persuaded, because the constitutional position, it must be open unless you can really justify it. So, Chair, the process, what we're doing here, and your proposal, I think is all in order, in short. Thank you very much.
Okay. So you state here that the board has forwarded the request directly to yourselves to give legal opinion.
No, the board itself sent it to the committee. I got the request from Ms. Barley that was sent to our office. So we didn't deal with. I've not dealt with the board at all. We're not busy with that. That's for the committee to decide.
Okay. So as it stands now, PAMET does not know if we were granting them the permission or not.
No, not that I'm aware of. No, I haven't dealt with them at all. So they should be in the dark about this. They will get the information from the committee. I'm not sure if there was a response to the letter from Dr. Lodrich, but it is what it is.
Okay. Deputy, thank you so much, Advocate Jenkins.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Chief.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chairpersons. Good evening to you and the colleagues on the platform. Let me join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation, the legal opinion by Advocate Jenkins. Honorable Chairperson, I heard what Advocate Jenkins said about the request for a legal opinion. I'm just worried that the committee secretary, on her own, she took the steps to seek legal advice, of which is correct to seek legal advice, but that should have come from the co-chairpersons to the legal unit of Parliament. We don't want a situation where the committee secretary will run with something without the knowledge of the co-chairpersons. I want us to correct that from the onset. So coming back to the matter on the table, I fully agree with my colleagues. There is nothing that requires for this committee to close the meeting. If we were to discuss people's personal information, that was something else, or a threat to national security, that was something else. So in the presentation, there is nothing that requires us
Chair, I'm just losing Deputy Speaker now. I mean, Deputy Chief Whip.
Yeah, no, I noticed that we lost. Okay, can we take the next speaker and then she will rejoin? Honorable Hansinger.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, Chairpersons. Good evening, members. Thank you also for the input and legal opinion from Advocate Jenkins. I would like to emphasize 2 or 3 elements of what we were submitted or confronted with this evening. The legal opinion that we received is presented within the framework of parliamentary convention. In other words, historic reference and historic relevance. Also in terms of rules to give us particular direction how to consider and move forward on this, and I support everything within what was presented. But to me, there's a particular test question, around the quality of the occasion. In other words, to what extent will the quality of the content differ in a closed setting opposed to an open setting? From the two parties, in other words, from the members and from PARMED's side. And that is to be considered with a particular weighting, given that there's been similar meetings with PARMED and engagements with PARMED, where things were discussed around benefits and about the cost and other elements. So it might be that from PARMED's side, there is a concern because of the fact that PARMED is a closed scheme. In other words, in sharing information on an open platform, they would be limited in sharing technical information to give us the necessary insight on the basis of how benefits are calculated, given that it is a closed scheme. For the information related to benefits calculations and actuarial calculations of how they conduct their financial mechanics on the inside, to give us insight as to the sustainability and reason why the premiums are so high. And we might just defer some of that valuable information in taking a decision to have a closed meeting. And would it not be beneficial to have a subcommittee of some sort to have an exploratory conversation with PARMED, which I'm sure they will be open with, to then provide us the insight so that we know what we can expect in such a meeting and what we may miss out in a meeting which is not closed. That's from my side. Thank you, Chairperson. Appreciate it.
Honorable Hansina, when you say there had been similar meetings previously, you mean the meetings were closed?
Not necessarily. Thank you for the follow-up, Chairperson. Not necessarily closed in the sense of that it's a formal meeting, but that it was a setting within a framework of an extension of a caucus or an engagement where PARMED was invited to a caucus to then share benefit structure, and where the conversation then obviously through members that have experience of the scheme then had suggestions of, in comparison to other medical schemes, how it can be improved, or benefits that we miss out, or benefits that we don't have access to. And then in relation to the high premiums which we experience.
Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Takmo.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm not sure whether Honorable Deputy Chief Whip is back on the platform, but generally I would like to join her and the other honorable members who have broadly welcomed the presentation made by Parliament's legal section and generally support that approach. When you look at the actual opinion, because I think everyone's trying to understand what is the reason that PARMED is asking for this. And you will see there that they talk about safeguarding confidentiality of all information regarding PARMED beneficiaries. Now, nothing in that presentation refers to individual beneficiaries, Honorable Lechanyane or Honorable Van Rooyen. It's just a general input. But then they get onto this issue of, as well as the commercially sensitive proprietary data of the restricted scheme. So, my understanding is that, there's a law passed by this parliament which set up PARMED and the forerunner of parliament. There is an issue of public money being involved in, subsidizing and all the other issues around the cost and so on. So if there is commercially sensitive information that PARMED as a scheme wouldn't want Discovery or someone else, then my argument would be that clearly then they have the discretion not to include that in the presentation if it's commercially sensitive. And then if members ask questions, they could then indicate whether they are able to ask these questions or not. But my understanding is that there's a board, if I'm not mistaken, the deputy speaker chairs the PARMED board, and there are representatives, that serve on that board. The other reality is that we're meeting tonight. Yes, the meeting is on Friday, and I'm then just turning to the procedure point. But I think it obviously helps if, as soon as possible, the request of PARMED can be entertained and responded to, possibly even tonight. But I understand there would be a procedure to, if members feel we need to give PARMED an opportunity to motivate. But my view is that the opinion is solid. We always have to ask ourselves, are there, as the Constitution says, justifiable grounds? And there are going to be, from time to time, justifiable grounds. But the principle is to have this open. PARMED is a scheme for us as public representatives, and it also covers judges. There's public money involved. So my view would be that we respond and we basically indicate that we support the legal opinion that the meeting should be open. But if PARMED feels that there are commercially sensitive issues not to include in a presentation, that's up to them. And then this idea that beyond that, look, this is the first time, my understanding is that the 7th administration is receiving a general briefing about Parliament. We all have different views and perspectives. So I think this is a general presentation. What we as a committee then decide to do after the presentation, whether to set up a smaller committee to look at certain issues or whatever it is, we can decide that. So my view is that we support the legal opinion, communicate that to PARMED, but also communicate the fact that commercially sensitive information, that's up to them in terms of possibly amending their presentation, and then members can ask questions in the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Dagmo. Can I take Honorable Mkalipi?
Oh, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Chair, thanks for the clarity, because I wanted to start by asking what brought this item here. Because I know that the co-chairs supposed to brought the items before us, but I thought I heard you very well saying that it was brought by the Deputy Speaker after PARMED asked for the closed meeting. I think that one must be corrected, Chair, if it's correct, because I was going to ask the co-chairs, how do you brought such items to the committee? One, PARMED is servicing public representatives. So there's nothing suggests that we are private representatives, we are public. So everything must be public, because what you do privately, you must know that it will come to public. So therefore, we should be aware that as a public representatives serviced by PARMED, there's nothing that is hidden. That is number one. Number two, if we're going to be given the reasons why PARMED want the closed meeting, because now we are just assess the situation by getting the advice from the law who have tell us very clear, and we agreed with the advice to say that there's no rule that suggests that we must go in private, except if the committee take that decision. We are very fine with that advice from our advocate here, and to state that maybe in future let us be engaged first about the reason, so we can also have an understanding, because we just now shooting in the air discussing something that we don't have any understanding or any background to that effect, to what is the real reason. But I'm glad that most of the members here agreed that no, let us just be clear that we are not going anyway. We were not going to agree on the closed meetings, as other colleagues have put it, especially Honorable Matapel. She was the first speaker about this matter and says that it can be, and we must all be clear. And the Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC, I think he said so, and other members to say that no, we can't agree, and it must be clear. Let us take the message back. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Van Rooyen, I'm sorry I was muted. I'm calling you and I see there is no response. I was not aware that I'm muted.
Oh, okay, no, Chair. Look, Chair, earlier on you wanted us to respond to a specific question. I didn't get that question clear, but I'm properly following the discussions. And I think if I'm to offend, Chair, I don't think as Parliament we're also doing justice to this matter, because we've got representatives in this board. And I can tell you this, it's not only this board. We also have, and these are directly linked to our committee. We also have representatives in the, what is this, Public Office Bearers Pension Fund. And these representatives, they are there as trustees. And we all know that they've got a fiduciary duty to account to us as members of Parliament. I think when we deal with this Parliament matter, I will definitely insist that we should look at the role of those who are representing us in these boards, because from where I'm seated, I don't think as Parliament we are holding them accountable enough. They are there representing the agenda more than representing us as members of Parliament from various political parties, by the way. So I think maybe in our next meeting, Chair, in fact, I will insist that we discuss this in our next meeting. I will raise it in the appropriate meeting as we resolve on this matter of Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Suisa.
No, thank you, Chair. Pertaining to the question that you raised, Chair, when a person or a body or a scheme makes a request for a closed meeting, it raises a lot of questions. Whether we will ask confidential, you are asking whether we will ask confidential questions. That cannot be guaranteed, Chair, because as it stands, there is nothing that suggests that there is confidential information that will be shared, unless, Chair, they are afraid that we'll pick up some loopholes. Because, Chairperson, I want to speak for myself. I'm one person. I read and I listen very carefully, because what I have learned since being in Parliament is that not all the information is written down. Some of the information is spoken. It's in oral. And if something comes up, it's either they are afraid that in between the engagement or in between their information or in between sharing their presentation, we are going to pick up loopholes and we are going to ask questions. And there's nothing I want to tell you now, Chair, that there's nothing I can guarantee that I'm not going, because I'm going to ask a question and I'm not sure whether it's confidential or not. I beg to differ with Dr. Chris in the basis of maybe the issue of calculations. Members are entitled to know how calculations are done so that they should know where the money is going. Why is certain procedures expensive and the others are not expensive? Because this is a scheme where members of parliament are members and are of the privilege and entitled to information check. The same beneficiaries need to know what is happening in the scheme. If confidentiality is based on competition, according to Honorable Doug Moore, there is always competition, Chair. People will migrate to other schemes because of the service that they receive and the guarantees and the benefits. So we can't even make a conclusion that they are afraid that maybe Discovery. I stand to be corrected, Honorable Dagmo, whether people will go to Discovery or to GEMS or any other scheme that is out there. What we know as members of parliament that we are obliged to join PAMED unless there is a change in the whole legislation to say that you can join any other scheme out there. But as I stand is that it's compulsory to join PAMED in parliament. So it's not a question of competition because competition only appears if a person has got other options to go and join other medical schemes. So it can be an issue of commercial sensitivity and competition, and that they are afraid that their competition is going to know how they operate. It's out there. Everybody knows what is happening. You only have to make sure that you keep your people or your members satisfied and guaranteed, and you give them what you promise them. Under those circumstances, nobody can go, because you can go to a scheme where you pay 500 rands and you get the services of 2,000 per month. You can go to a scheme of 6,000 rands and get the services of 500 rands per month. So it's all about service. We shouldn't even be thinking, but I stand to be corrected, Chair, because I was listening to the two honorable members. Again, I agree with what Honorable Hlengwe is saying, that we are going to deliberate here. We'll never know the reasons. Maybe they should have thought that in our presentation, we are going to speak about 1, 2, 3, 4, which we think that is confidential. But as we are standing now, looking at the presentation and everything, we do not pick up anything confidential unless they are afraid that during their presentation, as they are talking, we are going to pick up some loopholes and we are going to ask questions that are maybe going to be classified as confidential. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair and honorable members on the platform and senior officials. Firstly, Chair, I just wanted to say, maybe having listened to a number of members, yourself and the Co-Chair may engage PAMED to express the view of members and maybe get to understand why was there a need on their side for a closed meeting. But secondly, Chair, I think the point that Honorable Van Rooyen has raised, it's important also for us to then determine how we engage with the various bodies to which we have representation as Parliament. Because in terms of PAMED, and I'm sure honorable members will appreciate that given that this is our scheme, we have elected representatives to serve on the board. We have also, the provinces have also elected speakers of 2 provinces during this term because they usually rotate. So Gauteng Speaker and Western Cape Speaker are members of the board representing the members of the provincial legislature because they are also part of the scheme. And on an annual basis, there's usually an annual general meeting for all members of parliament to participate when PAMED gives the report and so on. So I just think it would be important maybe at some stage to then say what becomes the interface
between us as the Joint Standing Committee on Finance, with PAMED, with the Pensions Fund Board that also has got our representatives, as to how those relate to us vis-a-vis some of their governance structures that also include the totality of members. I just wanted to flag that for your reflection, co-chairpersons, as we continue in the future as the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I'm sorry I was kicked out of the meeting. I don't know. Honorable Chairperson, I said already that I agree with my colleagues, of which I still do. But what I want to raise in this meeting, Honorable co-chairpersons, is that PAMED, as the Speaker has correctly said, have representatives from Parliament. There is also a general meeting where all members participate. So, if they want us as a committee to close the meeting, while the general meeting is not a closed meeting, what is it that they are going to present to us that requires us to have a closed meeting? Because the presentation doesn't have anything. Secondly, Honorable Chairperson, I still believe that the presentation they have forwarded to us have got nothing that requires a closed meeting. And as this committee, we must also have the legal unit or Advocate Jenkins to be part of that particular meeting. It's done in Parliament that our legal unit will be present to listen to the argument that will be presented by PAMED so that they can also advise us further and put forward their legal opinion. So that is what I want us to request our legal unit to be part of the meeting. So, Honorable Chair, I think we have overstayed our welcome on this matter. We are in agreement of what needs to be done. So, can we proceed with the program, today's program? Bafana Pele is playing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip. The meeting on Friday will not be a closed meeting. And if there is commercially sensitive information that they would have wanted to present in that meeting, apart from what they have already sent, that information will not be presented. And because we have representatives in the board, ourselves as a committee, the Joint Standing Committee, I believe we have a right that we can always invite those members to hear from them what the issues are. And I believe when we will be inviting them, we will not be inviting them as the board of PAMED, but as our representatives in the board. And I want to agree with you, Deputy Chief Whip, that we have overstayed the issue. We must move straight to the business of today's meeting. May we please have the agenda lighted on the screen? Thanks very much, Cindy. Can we check if we have apologies?
Yes, Chairperson, we received one apology from Ms. Clark, who is on a study tour with Portfolio Committee on Health.
Is that the only apology?
That's the only one, Chair.
Are there further apologies that honorable members wish to record in the meeting?
Yes, Chair, is the apology of our main member, Honorable Mautwe. She's engaged in other committee as well.
What is the committee in which she is engaged?
I think she mentioned that there was a magistrate commission that was sitting the whole week or something.
Yeah, you know the standard in this joint standing committee, Honorable Mkhalipi, that if she is engaged in the magistrates commission, we mention it like that, and then the apology is accepted.
Okay, Chair.
Yeah. Can we then move to? Thank you so much, honorable members, for the apologies that have been recorded. Let's move to the next item and hand over to the speaker, Honorable Dudisa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I won't take much, just to indicate that today we are presenting the draft annual performance plan, which is really in line with our legislation that provides that we have to, after 6 months, indicate what is the direction for the coming year and also the proposed budget. So it is a draft presentation that we will make to, which is really consistent with what our legislation on Joint Financial Management Act provides for Parliament to do. So I would hand over to the chairperson of the NCOP through you, Chair, and then the STP. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Chair of the NCOP.
Chairperson, can you hear me?
Very, very loudly. We can hear you, Honorable
No, thank you
Chairperson.
very much. I'm sorry, I've got network problems here in the house. Maybe I'll start off by greeting the members, the speaker, as well as you co-chairpersons and the officials as led by STP. Indeed, as the speaker has presented and has indicated earlier on, I just want to indicate that I'm in sync with what has been said by the speaker, and we are aligned in accordance with the presentation. Thank you very much. We'll then request the STP to make a presentation on our behalf. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, STP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chair, and good evening to both of you as co-chairs, and good evening to Madam Speaker and Madam Chairperson and the honorable members of this joint standing committee. We will be presenting the draft a draft APP for 2026-2027, as indicated by Madam Speaker, with its corresponding draft budget for the same period. And this presentation is made in response to Section 13, Section 14, and Section 15 of the Financial Management of Parliament and Legislatures Act. which requires that for every ensuing financial year, we must present at least 10 months before the start of a new financial year. And that requires a cycle of planning that takes into account April, which is the official start of our financial year, to March. So indeed, as at May, in a 10-month, we have prepared the draft APP and the draft budget and submitted as required to the executive authority. It will remain a draft, Honorable Co-Chair and members, until the corresponding budget that takes its own timelines to be concluded to a point where Parliament's appropriation is confirmed. And this is a draft of the priorities for year 2 of our 5-year strategy that has been tabled in Parliament for 2025 to 2029. So I would request through you, Chairperson, the manager responsible for the planning process in Parliament, Ms. Brenda Mashika, to present the institutional component of this plan. And she would also be followed immediately by the acting Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Nomonde Mpefumlo, to likewise present the budget component. There is a component that we will bring to the attention of members, Chairperson, in respect of the timeline of 10 months, wherein we presented to EA at the time a draft budget that did not include what was at the time a process that was in motion, and that pertains to the rebuilding of Parliament. And at the time in May, one process was outstanding in respect of the old assembly appointment of a contractor. And for the new assembly, already the facts pertaining to the budget were known as at May this year, whereas for the old assembly, they were not yet known, owing to the fact that the Development Bank of Southern Africa was in the process of appointing a contractor. They eventually appointed in June, 1 month after that draft, and we now have figures that are now a confirmed fact, and we will present those in the budget that will be drafted, presented as a draft. So through you, Chairperson, I would like to invite Ms. Mashika to cover the presentation, but I felt I must indicate that context so that when you see an amendment of a figure, it is contextualized the basis around that. And thank you very much, Chairperson Brenda. You may proceed.
Thank you, STP. Good evening, co-chairs, honorable members of the committee, Madam Speaker of the National Assembly, Madam Chairperson of the NCOP, STP, as well as colleagues. We are presenting the draft APP and draft budget for the financial year of 26-27, as has been said, covering the summary of the strategic priorities defined in the 7th Parliament Strategic Plan. Also, the draft APP annual and quarterly targets will be covered, together with the risks that were defined at the time. We shall conclude the presentation with the draft budget. So this draft APP for 26-27 is a requirement in the FNPPLA to ensure that on an annual basis, Parliament delivers on its mandate and priorities that have been defined in the strategic plan for the 7th term. Specifically, as STP had said, Section 15 of that FNPPLA requires that 10 months before the start of the new financial year, that a draft APP be developed, be submitted, be tabled, and referred to the oversight mechanism which is this particular committee. So we did then table this draft APP in June as required. And now we have processes underway to review and to revise the APP and refine it with continuation indicators and other additional targets that will ensure that we deliver towards the 7-term outcomes. And the process of finalizing the APP is dependent on the finalization of the budget process, as STP has alluded, so that we can secure the funding of strategic and operational requirements that will be implemented in the next financial year. So currently, the budget process is at a stage where there are consultations or will be consultations between the Executive Authority and the Minister of Finance during the month of September. And this will be followed by indicative allocations that will be provided for in November and December. We also do anticipate that final allocations will follow by February 2026, and the approvals may be provided by March. So hopefully, if the budget process goes well in the new financial year, we will plan to submit the final APP and the budget in time for execution in the next financial year. So looking, just highlights of the guiding principles for this particular APP. The development of the draft APP were guided by the strategic plan for the 7th term, and therefore, as STP has said, this will be our second year of implementing the plan, with 25-26 having been the first year of implementing the strategic plan. Honourable members will remember that the Parliament went through comprehensive planning processes last year with both the National Assembly as well as the NCOP setting the direction and formulating the policy priorities to address national concerns and also to strengthen democratic governance. So the APPs then for the next 5 years will be carrying those related targets so that we can sequentially move Parliament towards the delivery of those key priorities. And we've defined the key priorities as follows. Priority number 1 is defined as strengthening the oversight through provision of data insights and other mechanisms that monitor government responsiveness. Also, it's about being intentional in the next term, or in this term rather, to ensure that the oversight efforts can be matched with accountability instruments that will drive action. Other priorities, or the second priority, relate to the making of laws that deliver positive societal change, while also making sure that we can increase participation rate of citizens in the most meaningful manner. And the third priority relates to the improvement of public office appointment processes to ensure that they are harmonized and that we can secure openness as well as an effective process in how we appoint public office officials. And then the final priority is about looking at improving international engagements through the monitoring of international agreements and resolutions. And so in shaping the strategic plan, guided by Parliament's priorities for the 7th term, the importance for us is about the annual work and the outputs that will come through those processes that would eventually lead us to specific outcomes and the impact that we do wish to see. And then at the foundation of this pyramid that we've provided is that there is common understanding that overall, the effectiveness of Parliament must be improved. So from an administration point of view, our parliamentary service must be of quality, it must provide support to members, and also ensure that we are citizen-centric and providing that efficient service. And then the next level, looking at the priorities and the focus areas for Parliament, as I've just articulated in the previous slide. We then execute that work and ensure that then we give outputs that would lead us to outcomes and the results that we want to see. And what we want to see in the next 5 years, we want to be able to see an efficient and effective Parliament that provides quality support in all the work that it does. Secondly, we want to see laws that make a difference in the lives of South Africans. They must be impactful. And then we also want to see an executive that responds quickly, responds appropriately. Members have spoken in depth in this regard, and a Parliament that also holds the executive accountable. We also want to see citizens who can actively participate and are enabled to do so in their own languages in the most meaningful manner and an adequate manner that also drive inputs to change society. And then finally, we want to see members that, capacitated with information, with insights, with ongoing professional development so that they can carry out their constitutional functions. And so collectively, all of these elements defined here and being elevated, executed, and done better can speed up the service delivery and ultimately ensure that we meet the desired impact that raises the quality of life in our country and for our citizens. And so moving on then, in the next 5 years, what we have defined in the strategic plan, we have set those targets on achieving the outcomes. And also we have defined this in the relevant programs to manage these outcomes for Parliament as defined under Program 1, which looks at administration, and Program 2 under legislation. Sorry, Program 1 on administration and Program 2 looking at legislation and oversight. Under Program 1, the result we want is one looking at a digital workplace. We must be able to leverage on the emerging technologies and provide members with data analysis as well as insight, as I've said, so that we can execute on oversight work. So Parliament will be automating key parliamentary processes to ensure that there is, real-time access to information and that we can improve the efficiency of committee work. Coupled with this, under Outcome 1 is making sure that we have a motivated and a skilled workforce. Over the next 5 years, we want to be able to improve on human capital practices and also see an engaged workforce that shapes Parliament and positions Parliament as an employer of choice through purposeful work that will be done. And then for Program 2, under Outcome 2, legislation and oversight, we want to see a responsive executive, as I've said. Outcome 3, we want to see citizens that can participate meaningfully. And so we will be identifying and implementing improvements that help us to engage better. Ultimately, then, in 5 years, we want to be able to get positive experience from citizens on our engagement efforts over the years. Outcome 4, we want to see members who are fully capacitated with ongoing professional development. And then Outcome 5, looking at legislative impact assessments that improve lawmaking. So these are the 5-year targeted areas which we have defined in the strategic plan. And to get to these over this term, the APP then has been sequenced accordingly with the relevant outputs over the years so that we can achieve these. So the next slides, we present the draft targets for 26-27 that have been developed and that were submitted in May this year. And as I mentioned earlier on, this work is ongoing. It's really undergoing revision so that we can refine it and improve on what has been provided in the draft. So for Program 1, Outcome 1, as I've said, we want to be able to see the automation of key parliamentary processes. We have provided key targets over the next 3 years on the efforts to automate and achieve efficient parliamentary operations, specifically focusing on committee operations on submissions, looking at monitoring and tracking of resolutions and the key dashboards that would help us measure and ensure that we can define the status of delivery and where we are. The second focus area will be on the implementation of the human capital strategy, looking at those annual initiatives that we will execute and then implementation over the midterm. What we will also do is conduct an employee engagement survey so that we can be guided on areas where we can improve on employee engagement over the years. And this particular slide then looks at the quarterly targets that help us achieve our annual targets at the end of the financial year. And on the automation elements, we'll obviously be looking and moving through the quarters, looking at the analysis, initial designs, the developmental work, as well as final system, user acceptance testing to ensure that all the elements of the systems have been provided to capacitate the committees with automated processes. And then for the human capital work, an implementation plan is going to be provided with the relevant annual initiatives, and therefore honorable members will be fully appraised on this implementation plan and those outputs that seek to be achieving the human capital strategy. On outcome 2, to strengthen oversight over the executive, we have provided the draft targets, which are the continuation of targets in 25-26 to ensure that we improve on executive responsiveness. This target builds on the foundational work that we would have done in this year, where the focus was on establishing, reporting mechanisms on monitoring executive responsiveness. So the status report in 26-27 is really about making sure that we move beyond just reporting, but look at measuring the point to actively drive executive action. We want to pinpoint not only the timelines, but also the completeness of responses that are provided by the executive. There'll also be a focus on gaps that have been identified and introduction of improvements where applicable when it comes to executive responsiveness. And so to achieve this, we must be able to see an improvement in accountability mechanisms. There is no oversight without accountability. And to build trust in Parliament, we need to ensure that we focus on the implementation of enforcement measures, especially for resolutions not responded to or those that have not been implemented. And so for 26-27, it really would be ideal for us to implement the recommendations on accountability measures that would have been defined in 25-26. And then on the oversight priority plan, the aim for 26-27 is to continue the work that was started in 25-26 and ensure that we introduce then more committees to the oversight plan and start to build on the adoption of the plan and the measures so that we can meet the national development plans. We have provided the quarterly targets on the strengthening oversight over the executive, which aim to provide implementation plans early on, as well as the details, as well as the progress reports over the quarters. The committee will be appraised on a quarterly basis on the progress of the execution efforts, as well as the quarterly results that come through the quarterly reporting mechanism. For outcome 3, looking at public participation, we seek to continue the execution of the detailed annual improvements that are currently being defined in 25-26. Members would agree that for Parliament to secure an improvement in how citizens participate in legislative and other processes really requires a multidimensional approach, but also a multi-year approach that involves various stakeholders. So we will be conducting all of that work with provincial legislatures, civil society, and other partners to ensure that holistically we can improve on public participation. We will provide these details in the revised APP, making sure that we can continue on the work that is being done in the current financial year. And then on outcome 4, looking at the enhanced capacity of members, we will continue in 26-27, providing capacity building and professional development programs for members. And in addition, as we've said, in 25-26, looking at the development of the strategy, in 26-27, we want to execute and implement that particular strategy. And the strategy really aims to assess, current delivery approaches, are they effective? How can we introduce new approaches in light of the modern ways now available to us to provide professional development of members? We'll also be exploring the, future available and sustainable funding options for member capacity building so that we can continue in this regard. We also want to heighten the the experience of members when it comes to capacity building programs. We want it to be a process that is delightful and one that really returns investment. So we will be looking at creative ways on how we coordinate, how we evaluate capacity building programs, and also making sure that we monitor accordingly. So all of these components will be considered in 26-27, and then we will then select initiatives that will be implemented. The final outcome on impactful lawmaking looks at, again, continuing on conducting legislative impact assessments. The impact assessments are going to be expanded in 26-27 to more selected pieces of legislation, and also making sure that we can start introducing, the provision of feedback from these assessments back into the legislative process so that it becomes a meaningful process. There will be other considerations on lawmaking reforms that we would have considered, and these may be included also in 26-27 as part of the targets for impactful lawmaking. So as we revise the APP and consider all of these elements, we will provide for these targets. So this is then the final outcome and target on the draft 26-27. And now we're going to be looking at the risks and mitigations that were defined at the time in May in the development of the plan. So we did consider relevant risks that are, aligned to the outcomes as well as the mitigation measures. And at the time, the following risks and mitigation plans were identified on the following: unsustainable funding of Parliament's mandate. Another risk that was identified was on the inadequate infrastructure to conduct proceedings. We identified human capital constraints, information security, as well as the obsolete technology infrastructure, looking at, the legacy systems that we are currently carrying and how these are risky in the scheme of vulnerabilities that they present. Other risks that we did identify for the rest of the outcomes related to the underutilization of data, and then holistically, the risks on ineffective legislation, oversight, public participation instruments, which we have discussed in detail above. So we have since revised some of these risks, and as part of the process of updating the APP, we will be conducting a comprehensive risk revision workshop. And this workshop will ensure that we consider progress made on executing the risks and also help us identify any new risks and mitigations that will assist us. So that concludes then the slides on the draft APP targets and the related quarterly targets as well as the risks. The next slides, the acting CFO will give us a view of the draft budget that was developed at the time of this particular APP. Acting CFO, please proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Mashika. Good evening, Honorable Chairperson, Co-Chairperson, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, NCOP, Honorable members of the committee, STP, and the colleagues. I'll be taking you through the budget request, the budget needs of Parliament, the funds that are required to execute the targets that have been presented by Ms. Mashika over the 2026 MTF. As STP indicated, the budget was prepared in May in line with Section 16 of FMPPLA and presented to the Executive Authority. Subsequent to that, the appointment for the construction of Old Assembly happened. So that means the figures changed. Here we've got total budget of 5.1 billion. However, with the change in appointment of the Old Assembly, the revised budget for 2026-27, it's 5.8 billion. So there was additional request to ensure that construction is completed and they are able to pay the service providers of 652 million for rebuilding. And also we reviewed there was also an additional request for 36.4 million for finishing the 11th, 12th floor and 13th floor in 90 Plain Street for those floors that they are revamping for the staff to return to office, of which it was not allocated. So they requested that. It's not in the indicative allocation of National Treasury. So we requested that as well. So it's increasing this request. And then also we reviewed the allocation request for the direct charge for remuneration of members, looking at the current spending for the year and what we anticipate to spend in the following year. So we reviewed to increase by 36 million. And overall, the change from this 5.1 billion to 5.8725 million, which is rebuilding, and these areas are just touched on direct charge. So the request for execution by Program 1, Program 2, and Program 3 appropriated fund request. Sorry, Ms. Mashigan, the previous slide. It's 4.5, and then there's direct charge. But if we exclude the rebuilding, then it will be 3.6 billion. There's 1.4 in this amount for rebuilding. Before it was revised, because the total request for rebuilding now after appointing for Old Assembly is 2 billion. That is additional funding that we request from National Treasury. Next slide, please. So with the revised request of 5.8 billion, the Parliament Management and National Treasury colleagues, in preparation for the meeting for Executive Authority and the Minister, we did engage on the request of Parliament. We outlined to them the needs, and then we submitted subsequent information that they requested in terms of supporting the request for Parliament. Next slide. So in overall, when you're unpacking the request, it's made up of 3 programs and the direct charge, Program 1, Program 2, and Program 3. Program 1, which is administration. Under administration, we've got the Executive Authority, which is the Office of Speaker and the Chairperson. And then we've got Office of Secretary to Parliament and Corporate Services. In the Office of Secretary to Parliament, that 1.6 billion, 1.4 of it's for rebuilding, which has increased now to 2 billion with the appointment for Old Assembly. So the request for the office is 216 million. So also in that office, the request for vacancies is centralized in the Office of Secretary for the whole institution. So if you're looking at 2026-27 financial year, included in that office, there's 174 million for vacancies budget request. And in the following year, 187 million. In the other year, 202 million. So all the vacancies of the institution are centralized in that office. Corporate services, it will all be all the other offices in the administration program, which will be strategy management office, finance, internal audit, registrar of members, interest, human capital, ICT, institutional support services, protection services, parliamentary communication, members, facilities, and all these office treasury advice. All their requests are consolidated, which makes that 725 million for 2026-27. And the figures on the other tires 777 million and 831 million. So the total request is 2.5, which has now been revised to take into account the increase of 725 million in the 2026-27 financial year.
Okay.
So the request is
Chairperson. Ntatele Khanyan.
The chairperson is me.
Chair, the numbers are not numbering. I'm trying to look at these figures, and the numbers that the presenter is speaking about are not reflecting anywhere in the slides. Because I'm trying to follow, I've been making notes, but I don't see the numbers that she's speaking about. Can we get clarity on that before we go forward? Because she's speaking of numbers that are not here. Thank you.
Okay, can we get clarity on that?
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I was trying to outline that the figures that are here were at a point in time in May. The change that came to effect to these numbers currently now is for the rebuilding, and the overall change is 725 million. So I was saying then in the Office of Secretary to Parliament, there we've got 1,695 million. So included in that office, because if you're looking, it looks huge, that office, compared to other sub-programs, because the rebuilding funding is included there.
Okay.
Yes.
Honorable Swiss.
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, I hear the explanation, and these documents are going to be public record. And there will be public record without the explanation that is being given here. So I would have appreciated that if the changes would have been made on the document. So anybody who goes on public records of Parliament and then they see the amounts, because now we are listening to a presentation that is not speaking to we are listening orally, but what is on the slides is something different. And anybody who goes on the system is going to look at these numbers, and then later on there's going to be a report. So I think it was only going to be proper that since there were changes, as the presenter is saying, they should have made the changes before they come here. Because my greatest fear is that she's speaking to numbers that are not here. That's my problem. And this is going to be after this whole thing is going to be approved at a later stage. This is how it's going to reflect. And anybody who's going to have access to the recordings is also going to pick up that the presenter is speaking about 1.8 billion, but we are only seeing 1.6. I'm just making an example at this moment. So I just think that if there were changes that were made because of the rebuilding and the appointment that was made at a later stage, the estimation should have been here. But at this moment, we are looking at these estimations and she's speaking to other numbers, which is very confusing to me because I'm trying to check where all of these estimations are coming from, but the numbers are not numbering. And any other person that does not know what is actually happening is also going to pick up that the numbers are not numbering. They're speaking about this, but I don't see money here. So I'm just saying that, Chair, we need to be careful when we do presentations, because after this budget has been approved, it's going to be public record and we can't change it, because right now we are going to engage on what we are having here. And that's what we have prepared. So it's only due diligence that the changes should have been made to say this is where we were, this is what we are estimating now. The reasons are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we are still sitting with 1, but the presenter is speaking about 3. That's my greatest concern.
CFO, do you get the concern, or do you have a way to explain it?
Chair.
Thank
Thank you very much for indulging me. Chairperson, there is no numbers that are not tallying around this process. We did indicate, honorable members, that by law we are required 10 months in advance to prepare and table. So the status as at May 2025, which is the draft that we are presenting to the committee now, contained the figures that are before the members. So we could not and we cannot amend the document that is already submitted to the executive authority and has been tabled. The only thing that we are duty required by law is to disclose the components where change has happened. And taking into account, honorable members, that this is a draft budget that can only materialize by 30th March next year. So at the time that we have the final figures confirmed through an appropriation that shall have been tabled in Parliament, then we will alter that. So we are presenting a draft which does not communicate any confusion. So we are merely saying the 725 that we are disclosing as a record to members is occasioned by developments post the tabling and submission. So we could not then say before the committee, say members take into account that there's a 725 we have altered. We are unable to do so. So we have to say, yeah, the 725 is broken into the following 3 areas. And as the draft proceeds in the organization, we will then factor those areas, Chair. So it's not figures hidden at all.
The explanation is adequate, STP. Thank you so much. Can we proceed with the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, STP. So the program 1, compensation of employees, it's 840 million. The projected cost for next year, goods and services, 216. And then the rebuilding, then it's 1.5, of which will increase in line with what we just explained with the appointment for Old Assemble. Next slide, please. Program 2, legislation and oversight, National Assembly budget. The budget that is here is submitted by divisions who consolidated in engagement with the whole management of the institution. National Assembly is 57 million for 26-27, 61 in the following year, and then 66 in the 28-29 financial year. NCOP, the request is 72 million, which is made up of compensation and goods and services. Shared services budget, it's 879 million, which will be made up of core business, keys, all the divisions that are in international relations, and all the divisions that makes the shared services. They make that figure 879 million. Sectoral parliaments, which is LSS, legislative sector support, 43 million. The total request is billion and 53 million. Then it's broken down under compensation of employees, goods and services, and then capital assets. You can see mostly it's human capital, goods and services for public participation oversight. And then capital assets. Capital assets, it's a small amount, 5.7, 3.5, and 3.8, because all the computer equipment for all staff of the institutions are centralized in program 1. Hence, there's small capital request in this program. Next slide, please. And then expenditure estimates for program 3, associated services, members' facilities that will be for entitlement of members. This is the request, 308, 326, and 342 million. Transfers to political parties, 627 million, 656 and 687. Political parties, when we talk about request, we include what is indicative allocation from National Treasury, because we allocate what they give to Parliament, nothing less, nothing more. And then transfers to Parliament Budget Office. This is based on the request of the office, the 22 million, 23 million, and 25 million. And then broken down into economic classification, compensation of employees. In the compensation of employees, the amount that is there is salaries for the PBO office and contributions to PAMET. Also in that members' facilities total of 308, it includes the PAMET amount of 103 if you're looking at 2026-27. So the compensation is PAMET, and also the salaries for PBO office, goods and services, the entitlement of members, also the office operations of the PBO office. Then transfers to political parties, 627 million. The total for this office request is 958 million for 2026-27, 27-28, a billion, and 28-29, 1.055 billion. Next slide, please. Oh. So this is the total request for over 2026 MTF. We are engaging the colleagues from National Treasury. We had a management meeting with all the management team and the colleagues from National Treasury. They will be meeting in the mid-September between STP and the DG. Their engagement in the technical committee of National Treasury and Finance Management Office to unpack the requests and give them additional information to support the request. And then there's an expected meeting between the executive authority and the minister to engage on the budget requirements of Parliament and see how they can fund the shortfalls from the indicative allocation. Thanks, Ms. Mashika and SCP. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Through you, Chairperson. That's the draft report for APP 26-27 and budget, and it will go through various iterations until it is finally approved by the executive authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, STP, for the Joint Standing Committee. Can I check? I see 4 hands. 5. Just 1 more minute to check if there is an additional hand before I close the list. Honorable members, we have 5 hands here going. So the list is closed with the 6th, that is Helen Nilmay. Yeah, the 6 of you are noted to speak. There is not going to be any additional hand unless there is a follow-up. Thank you so much. We take the hands in this order. Honorable Cameron, Honorable Suisa, Honorable Hadebe, Honorable Badenhorst, Honorable Van Rooyen, and the last is Honorable Nilmay. Can we participate in that order? Thank you. Honorable Dagmo.
Thanks very much, Chair, and greetings once again to everyone on the platform, and also to thank the Executive Authority, the Speaker and the Chair, as well as STP and the parliamentary officials. I think, Chair, it's often a bit difficult to know how to, deal with what is, in a sense, a almost advance notice 10 months before, and looking at a plan plus a budget for 26-27. So in a way, I think it's important information. There is the compliance with the legislation that governs the oversight of financial matters of Parliament. But in a sense, it's providing us with information about plans for the next financial year. So from my point of view, my own views that, and propose that we, note the contents of the report. Clearly, we will be updated further along the line. And I think our task as a committee is also to look at whether we have practical proposals in regard to the items proposed for the budget. But I think for now, at this stage in the process, I would welcome the report and propose, Chair, formally that we note the contents. Thanks.
Thank you, Thank you so much, Honorable Dagmo. I think you have made a very progressive proposal. Can I take Honorable Suiso?
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, I have a few concerns and inputs. I'm very concerned, Chair, and I think I spoke about this even in the meeting that we had the other day with Public Works, that we are still speaking about appointment of contractors, and it's a concern that we are not even going to meet the deadline of finishing the reconstruction of Parliament. If we are still speaking about, we are only appointing the contractor to the old assembly now, which is one of the reasons that the budget, the estimation or the proposed budget by the executive authority has those deviations in between from what they presented and what is going to be presented to National Treasury. It's a great concern, and I'm going to keep on raising it. And I hope that, Chair, I'm going to be proved wrong that Parliament is going to be reconstructed. The reconstruction is going to be finished within the 7th administration. I need somebody to prove me wrong that Honorable Siwisa, we are going to finish this thing in the 7th administration. But at the pace that we are going, I don't see ourselves getting there, but I stand to be proven wrong, Chair. I want to check the issue of the legal division. Is it also included when we speak about empowering legal? Because we have a problem, Chairperson, of the slow pace at which private members' bills are being processed and the assistance that is received from the legal division in Parliament. Is it also part of the program to say that it's also going to be capacitated? The issue of support staff to ensure that members are capacitated to do their work. And I'm concerned, Chair, because I don't even know if we have a content advisor before we can go and solve problems in other houses. If we have a content advisor, I don't know when maybe the last time I got it, I'm not sure. But we even have a content advisor in this committee. The involvement of citizens. Can you please elaborate? Because some citizens in rural areas or areas where there is the struggle of network are deprived of being active participants, especially when the presenter was speaking about online. It's all about online, digital, online. Some of these citizens, they have to travel to the nearest town for them to access an internet cafe because they don't have smartphones or they don't even have data to go online and do any kind of submissions. The issue of response by executives should not be seen as an obligation only and a tick box exercise, but should be a qualitative and responsive to resolve issues, especially service delivery issues. How will the parallel working of the three spheres be addressed by Parliament? I know that the Speaker addressed it the other day. In the NCOP, we do have the privilege to both speak to national, provincial, and local. But members of Parliament in the NA, they do not have that privilege. So how are we addressing the issue of parallel functionality between the three spheres? Where does this fit in the APP, taking into consideration the purpose is to hold the executive accountable? The issue of risk mitigation, we speak about funding the funding is unsustainable, human capital constraints. It's also of a great concern, and I hope that the program that has been, the APP that has been put forward, with the approval of National Treasury, that is going to be addressed because, Chair, we need for once, the 7th administration needs to yield positive results whereby the main purpose is service delivery. So I want to come back to the issue of the numbers are not numbering, Chair. And I think I hear what the STP is saying. But we are right now, and in the end, the presenter was saying that we are going to present this to the National Treasury, and then so that the deviations or the difference, so that we can see how they are going to accommodate the difference in the money that we saw on the slides and what the presenter was speaking verbally. So I want to ask a question. The document that is going to be sent to National Treasury for approval, because this is an estimation and a proposal, is it what the presenter said verbally, or is it what we have as a document? Which one is going to be amended or going to be attended to? Because we need to know when we hold the office of the STP accountable, on which amount are we holding them accountable? Because it's a great concern to me, Chair. The slide speaks about 5.1 billion. The presenter speaks about 5.8 billion. I fully understand that this was done that, but it would have been a privilege that at the beginning of the presentation we would be made aware to say that the numbers that you are going to present are slightly changed. This is the original document that we have presented to the Executive Authority. But due to the changes and the addition to the issue of the appointment of the contractor for the old assembly and any other matter, the numbers have changed, but we cannot alter the document because the document has already been sent to the executive and the executive authority has already approved. Nobody said that. We get into a presentation, we are given 5.1, we've spoken about 5.8. Now the question is National Treasury getting a document that says 5.1 or a document that says 5.8? For them to actually attend to the difference in the amounts, because that's what was said, that we are going to present the document. National Treasury needs to see how they can assist in the difference of the amount when we started to do the document and when we ended up appointing the contractor and any other matter that we picked up at a later stage. That's where my concern is. And again, this is going to be public record. I want to know which public record is going to be public. The amounts that we found today or the amounts that are going to be sent to National Treasury, when National Treasury needs to address the difference between the first document and the second document that we do not have, which was only presented to us verbally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable. So with STP, the appointment of the contractor for the old assembly, is it behind schedule? I think you can add it to the list of the questions so that we understand if that is in accordance with the project plan or if we are behind. Honorable Khader.
No, thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good evening, everyone on the platform. I think that I'll concur with both our members of the committee, that is Honorable Dagmo and Honorable Siwisa. What is critical here is that this is not a final budget which is here. I think that as the acting CFO has indicated that this what they presented to the executive authority, and then but because of the appointment of the contractor, the figures had to change. But I think that when they go to the National Treasury, they have to go with the new figures. What you are going to, because the appointment was done after the document was made. But apart from that, Chairperson, I really, with this document which we are having in front of us here, I think that the Parliament has the possibility of becoming a real 21st century type of Parliament, where the members are capacitated, where the systems are automated, where the real function of Parliament, which is oversight and lawmaking, is being catered for thoroughly. So what I can say that really we have, as we stand here today, we have to note and appreciate the report, but wait for the final budget, which is going to come on the side of the National Treasury. I think it's only then that we'll be able now to pin them down to account. But thanks for the job well done, STP and the team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Hadebe, for the brevity of your comments. Honorable Badenhorst.
Evening, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and evening to the Executive Authority and the STP and the team and our colleagues. Chair, just for clarification, slide 9, there appears to be an incoherent strategy and operational plan here. Last week we were told that there's an emphasis on recruiting translators, and now the 28-29 target indicate that we will automate translations. Which can I just add is already being done globally through Zoom, etc. But my question would be, why are we still recruiting translators? Should we not bring that indicator forward and then upskill existing staff members? And then how many staff members are functionally employed? I think we've asked this before. Slide 7 indicates that the strategic plan aims to increase staff engagement level, but there's no indicator or a target for staff engagement level that I can see anyway. And then the indicator, slide 13, I'm not sure that indicator and the targets are correct. Last week it was indicated that the gap analysis has been completed. So why are we still referring to 90% implementation? Do we know what the gaps are? And if we don't know what the gaps are, why don't we know what the gaps are? Surely the targets must state the specific terms that we will implement. Otherwise, there will be no accountability on the administration and members of parliament. And we should receive an annual report on continued improvements to be implemented in the following year. Surely communication technologies are evolving, and so should the public participation strategies evolve with those communication strategies. The strategic KPI on slide 7 reads, improve citizen satisfaction. How does that target and the indicator relate to improve citizen satisfaction? For example, how much of the public inputs are actually taken into account? And then on unsustainable funding, it was indicated in earlier meetings that the funding model will be completed in September, if I recall correctly. And I would say that the funding model is unsustainable because the spending is unsustainable. So what cost-saving mechanisms have been identified? And I think we've asked this before as well. The committee resolved on cost-saving mechanisms, and the administration still haven't responded on those. And I think our committee also resolved in a previous meeting on a transparent budget process for Parliament through the establishment of a budget subcommittee or a forum, if I recall correctly. And then lastly, Chair, on slide 17, risk mitigation. Has those risks been costed, or are we just listing the mitigations there? So are the mitigations not part of plans, or are they just mitigations? I don't see any costing for that there. I'll stand with that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Badenhorst. May I proceed to Honorable Van Rooyen?
Thank you once more, Chair and your co-chair. Maybe let me start by welcoming the presentation from the Executive Authority. And of course, I must confess, I miss your voice, the NCOP Chair. It was good hearing your voice today. And I feel a bit consoled that at least you are part of the process. I was a bit worried of your conspicuous absence from the proceedings of these meetings. But thank you very much for attending and finally talking to the Joint Committee. Chair, allow me to make a simple request in terms of maybe complementing the information that has been shared with us. There's certain information that we struggle to retrieve. Maybe the information was shared on other platforms. We might have missed that opportunity. But this information is very important in as far as all the programs captured in the strategic plan are concerned. There is reference to a digital transformation strategy. I don't remember us discussing that as this committee, but I'm not saying let's discuss it. I'm just saying if that can be shared with us. The other information that I think we need is on the oversight priority strategy for selected committees. We found obviously dissecting what does that mean, but I think if that strategy can be shared with us, it will help a lot. If it was shared, we apologize in advance. If it was shared, then we should just be referred to where it was shared. And there is also a reference to a strategy on joint members' capacitation. What we know is that we have just been referring to capacitation streams without a clear indication of a strategy, So please, Chair, if that information can be shared with us. And also, there is also an information that is referred to in the plan on the pre and post legislation impact assessment framework. I don't remember us as a committee discussing that framework. That framework is very important because that's the framework that will be guiding us on the impact of some of the what you call the laws that we are processing. Through Parliament. So if that information can be shared with us, Chair, that will be highly appreciated. And maybe on a more general comment, Chair, we saw the reference to NDP and medium-term development plan as the basis of our plan. And we are somehow a bit disappointed because at no stage as Parliament, besides taking guidance from the executive, at no stage have we taken a robust discussion as to why did NDP miss most of its target. The plan, of course, is acknowledging some of the targets missed, is stating the extremes that we all know, high unemployment, inequality, poverty levels. But the road of the matter as Parliament, we haven't taken a robust discussion on why exactly is this plan failing, or maybe its implementation failing. Now there is this another new baby that we had to fight for us to know of its existence. As part, of course, it's aligned to the National Development Plan, the Medium-Term Development Plan. Remember, Chair, as a Parliament, the National Development Plan was just presented to us as part of a progress report. But us going through it, robustly discussing it, that never happened. It might be in any other committee, not necessarily our committee. So, for us as Parliament to come and use that as the basis of our planning, we are a bit disappointed as MK Party because, truly speaking, we seems not to be hitting the bull's eye in as far as the National Development Plan is concerned, but also we don't expect the same to happen with the medium-term development plan that we are currently using to contextualize our planning, So we just wanted to register that particular concern from our side as MK Party in as far as the contextualization of our strat plan is concerned. Then on the budget side, Chair, we have made the submission already, and we think the time is okay for us to, maybe for the Executive Authority of Parliament, to look into complementing the engagement with National Treasury by a fully-fledged multi-party budget forum. That will obviously discuss issues of budget augmentation, but also discuss issues of budget management generally, supporting the executive authority of the institution, that's the Speaker, as well as the Chair of the NCOP. So this we think this particular proposal, as this is working, this our first draft, is something that can be built in now, so as at least we take advantage of the participation of the various so-called political parties that are participating in parliament, to make sure that the parliament is properly funded, because that's our biggest concern, the budget provisions. I mean, we are going through an austerity budget, and obviously we are all, of course, encountering budget cuts. And the result of the matter is that the feasibility of this noble plan, the plan that has been generated, the plan that we are discussing now, it's really noble in the sense that it's capturing the spirit of our induction sessions. It's talking to exactly issues that have been raised by members during the induction session, But as to its feasibility, I mean, if we are to talk of things like the budget, we find it very, very questionable, So we are submitting that as part of this whole process, the time is right for us to consider incorporating this multi-party budget forum to complement the speaker as well as the chair of the NCOP as they engage. Because truly, the irony of a South African situation, honorable members, is that we are contesting for resources, and it's just now they are limited, and of course, we need a solid team. We can't just leave the speaker and the chair of the NCOP to engage national treasury without our support as political parties in parliament. If we want an effective parliament that will hold the executive accountable, we are submitting that we need a multi-party budget forum that will definitely accommodate all political parties in parliament as representative of the people, to complement, not doing any other thing, but to complement the good work that is being done by the speaker and the name of the issue. So that's what we are submitting on the budget side. And the issue of automation and digitalization, every time we speak of the paperless parliament, people look at it as something that is a small thing, or maybe not that substantial in terms of the cost to be considered. But I think as the committee the joint committee that is responsible for managing resources or overseeing the management of resources in parliament, we should, insist on formalization of this approach. It should not be left to the discretion of committees. Committees must be told by the executive authority of parliament that we stop this thing of using papers in parliament, because we are being provided with advanced and sophisticated tools of trade. And this thing of using papers is costing us a lot. We haven't even received a presentation on how much is it costing us, but knowing, the cost of papers and looking at the volumes that are being processed in parliament, I think we are losing a lot. And I think we should consider that as we build on this particular draft. We need to do away with papers and obviously advocate through the executive authority of this parliament for a paperless parliament. And lastly, Chair, from my side, we have agreed on, in fact, not agreed, it has been presented to us that committees will be receiving a certain amount to utilize for committee activities. I'm still on the budget issues. And the result of the matter is that, if committees are not guided on how to do that, I'm very sure that next year we'll be talking of underspending or obviously something else, because committees are not guided. But also, the question that we had when we were told that funding of committees is a uniform approach, it was the basis of that funding model. And because committees, if you look at the workload of committees, they differ from one committee to the other. And I don't think it's fair for committees just to be given a one-size-fits-all in terms of budget allocation. But because there was no baseline, we agreed that let's proceed with this a one-size-fits-all budget allocation to committees. But at least for this year, I think we should be considering as part of our plan, we should be considering obviously to a process of holding committees accountable on how they will be utilizing these allocations, or maybe them presenting their plans as to how they are going to utilize this. Because in the next year, it will give us a clear picture of how can we approach this one-size-fits-all type of budget allocation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Van Rooyen. The last speaker is Honorable Helen Nilmay.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. And given that this is a draft annual and budget plan for 26-27, I would like to second Honourable Doug Moore in noting the report. The only other comment that I had is I welcome the employee engagement program. I think obviously for Parliament to achieve its mandate, one would welcome motivated and committed staff. And I saw that in the annual plan, the rollout that would happen next year. But Chair, thank you very much. And I would like to second for noting the report. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you so much, STP and your team.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chairperson, and thank you very much to all honorable members in terms of the questions raised. We will share responses with the presenters, both of them, and the other components that may require responses by EA. I think the Honorable Chair and Madam Speaker would handle those aspects. Chairperson, on the issue of the rebuilding, the Honorable Committee may recall that on the 28th of March this year, we presented an update on the rebuilding of Parliament. And at that update, we presented the status as at March about where we are on all the 5 components of the parliamentary precinct development projects. And we call them work packages 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first work package is the refurbishment of offices in 90 Plain. And we gave an update at that time. We then further presented work package number 2, which is the development of the new assembly, rebuilding rather. And the work package number 3 is the refurbishment of the old assembly. The 4th work package deals with the precinct plan, and the 5th one deals with the development of a facilities management strategy. I'm mentioning all of them, Chair, because every time we present, we are required to cover all of them because they are taken all together as a package of rebuilding and refurbishment. So as at 28 March, we then presented that for the new assembly, a contractor has already been appointed as at December 2024. And that contractor was meant to start in April. We then said at the same meeting, the appointment of a contractor for the old assembly is scheduled for finality by June 2025. That's what we presented to the committee. So as we present now to say the figures that have now materialized by June is a consequence of an appointment having been made, which then reflects how much has been the appointment of the project for the OA. Hence the amount that the acting CFO was covering. You then ask Chairperson, is the appointment of the old assembly contractor then within the timelines that we presented? And the answer is yes, Chair. It has been appointed and has now, after the meeting of this committee, I think June, if I'm not mistaken, it might be 24 or something, before the recess, we then presented an update on the rebuilding. And we then indicated that the project is scheduled for completion by November next year. So the figures that we are indicating now, Honorable Siwisa, it's figures that from the December appointment, we are duty bound as soon as we receive confirmation that a contract has been appointed to officially inform National Treasury and submit the figures that relate to that appointment. And we did for the December appointment in writing. And we also did the same after the appointment of June. They already have the figures we are talking about. We then subsequently met with National Treasury on the 4th of August to discuss the broader budget of Parliament, not only for the rebuild, but the priority needs of the budget of Parliament for the next financial year, so that we then have a firm foundation for briefing of the executive authority as required by law to engage with the Minister of Finance. So our presentation today talks about a scheduled engagement this month of September. And the precursor to that is the Director General of Treasury, the Secretary to Parliament, and related officials discussing the draft estimates as well as the components of this budget. So as required in terms of Section 15 of the Joint Financial Management of Parliament legislation, rather Financial Management of Parliament, we are required to present this plan 10 months. So when we disclose figures, they talk to a prevailing status at that time. And once the status is updated, Section 16 and Section 17 of the Financial Management of Parliament anticipates that a draft budget, including any adjustments, must be taken through a consultative process up until an appropriation letter has been confirmed to Parliament, like any other entity. Then it triggers the appropriation instrument in terms of Section 18. So both 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 are provisions that guide the entire iteration of the budget. And once figures are known, before the start of financial year, the executive authority must then appropriate the budget from own resources of Parliament, from any donor funding, and any appropriation from the national budget, including any adjustment. So it is anticipated that when a draft is presented in that 10 months, there will be different stages where development may influence or affect that may necessitate any figures so adjusted must be tabled until appropriation done. Once it is done, Section 18, then the approval of all budgets then are done at the level of Parliament, which normally takes place in July for all committees of Parliament, including the vote of Parliament. It gets finally approved by Parliament. Then we publish the figures that are now a confirmed and accurate appropriation. So there is no misnomer in the flow procedure of how the budget process is canvassed and prosecuted until finality has been made. In regard to the issue of talking about automation, Honorable Badenost, indeed, we're talking about automation next year. It is no substitute to what we presented last week in respect of Q1, wherein we said there is a number of priority appointments that have been requested through committees to capacitate. And we mentioned such expertise as interpreters, language practitioners, the researchers, the content advisors, and committee secretariat. And we mentioned the numbers. So when we talk the language of automation, it is not an either or. It is more about ensuring that the requisite support is existing in Parliament. And when we present the broadcasting strategy of Parliament, including any other digital strategies that we're working on, we will then to canvass the fullness of the governance instruments that are required. So that when we talk about AI as an example, it will have to be an approved strategy by Parliament that talks to where do we start accepting that AI must do this work. So we can't by now say we can't appoint researchers or appoint interpreters. We will rely on AI when the overall instrument to regulate that is not yet in place, to be able to say, are we going to place reliance? What are the pitfalls? And so on and so on. So we need that capacity, but the rest of automation will be sequential in terms of the digital strategy of Parliament. So at this point, it is not a substitution of either or, but rather a continuum of professional interventions to improve the work of Parliament. I would like to ask Brenda to deal with the aspects about where are the operational KPIs. We have the APP priorities and outcomes and outputs. Then there is also what is contained in each division, which is the operational targets. So some of the elements you are raising, they relate to operational targets, which are not necessarily part of what we present in an APP, but rather the operational guideline for a department or a division to execute against the outcomes and outputs that have been outlined. So that emphasis exists at a divisional level about how to translate these outputs and quarterly targets into operational activity targets and plan. Brenda, I would like to deal with any aspects I have not. And if I have missed any other component, the acting CFO will deal with that aspect. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
STP Brenda.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, STP, and thank you to the members for their comments, guidance, as well as the wisdom. I think I'll address some of the questions specifically by Meneer Badenhorst on the engagement survey, looking at slide 7. So slide 7 deals specifically with the targets for 29-30. So we have defined then the 5-year targets that we would want to see at the end of this particular term, making those the strategic plan targets. And so on the engagement survey, we will be conducting the survey for the employees, possibly in 27 and 28. So as part of our processes to revise the APP, we look at, sequencing some of these targets, also looking at the budget availability and also making sure that we can sequence them in a way that provides meaning over the years. So this will form part of the revision of the APP when we include the engagement survey in the human capital strategy target. And HCM has confirmed that they will be able to conduct the engagement survey, but we're looking at possibly end of 27-28 or 28-29. This is also to ensure that we take into consideration the human capital strategy implementation and all of those improvement plans that will be implemented during the financial years. And then on the public participation improvement plan being defined in Q2 of this financial year. Members will remember that last week we presented on the Q1 performance outcomes as well as the results of the Q1 report. So the public participation will be providing an improvement plan for Q2. So it's a Q2 output delivery in Q2 of this financial year, where all of those improvements are going to be defined. So as soon as they are defined in Q2 of this year, we'll be able to ensure that in the next financial year, we are specific on what is going to be implemented and we provide for that. And then on the satisfaction rate of citizens, again, this is a 2029-2030 target that we want to achieve, and the citizen survey is really envisaged to be conducted either late 27-28 or the beginning of 28-29 financial year. This should also take into account the public participation improvement plans that we would have implemented along the 3 financial years, so that when we do then engage with citizens, we are able to ensure that we can provide high impact areas for improvement. And then on the risk being costed, yes. So our risk mitigation plans are being implemented. We are using current resources and operational expenditure as much as possible. And then also there are those that are considered for funding and are being funded, especially, for instance, the information security risks and the improvement of our cyber resilience in the organization. Those have specific targets as well as specific funding that is provided to ensure that we mitigate on those. And then on the operational plans, as members would understand that the APP is obviously providing the strategic initiatives, we then cascade a lot of these also into operational plans to ensure that we can improve overall and holistically on the parliamentary service in Parliament. So it's not just based on the strategic initiatives, but the operational plans taking into consideration all the functional areas as well. Thank you, STP. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe acting CFO and then the Chief Legal Advisor.
Thank you, STP. I think you covered most on the budget responses. Yes, indeed, the changes from 5.1 to 5.8 have been communicated to National Treasury. As we appointed the service provider, we communicated to National Treasury. Also, in terms of the cost-cutting measures, we are reviewing the policies. For example, the travel policy we've reviewed is at the approval stages. In terms of the SNT allowance that is provided for international engagements, we have reviewed so that we apportion if employees are receiving all the meals so that they can only get incident allowance or a portion for the meal not provided. Also, we looked also at the length of a journey. The current policy is saying if the journey is 4 hours, then we provide a business class. But now we review to say if the journey is 8 hours, but the policy is at the review and recommendation stage. So these are our strategies to cut costs and do more with the resources we've got. Also, human capital is busy with the work study to assess productivity of employees. These are one of the initiatives to assess and see where we can save, or if employees are not fully engaged, they can be redirected in other areas where they are needed instead of appointing new staff. So over time, we will see the benefits of that. Also, human capital policies are at advanced stage in terms of overtime management and acting allowances that are paid. They are managing having cut-off periods when to start paying for acting allowance. Those are initiatives to cut the cost. Also, the digital strategy automation over time will realize benefits, the savings. Also, I support the relook at committees in terms of reducing the printing, because if we're looking at the printing cost for 2024-25, we spent 12 million, and in the prior year we spent 16 million. So in those areas we can cut because members are getting tools of trade that they can utilize instead of us printing the packs for them. In terms of the funding model, STP is expecting to get feedback from FFC in terms of the draft of first phase of the funding model in November. which will assist us in unpacking and also to strengthen the conversation with National Treasury. Thank you, STP.
Thank you very much, ZA.
STP, the hand of the advocate was up.
Yes, I was calling here, Chair, through you to take the stage.
Yeah, thank you very much, STP, through you, Chair. Good evening to everyone on the platform. There was a question about the drafting capacity and whether this will be addressed. I would like to report that the drafting capacity has been addressed by the STP. We are well capacitated. We have standard operating procedures in place, and on average, we allow approximately 3 months to draft a bill, but that does depend on whether the policy formulation is in order. Often we have to go back and forth to the member for further instructions. And this has not been insurmountable, but we are aware that there has been delays in processing once the bills have been drafted, and this has been raised at NAPC, and I'm sure these challenges are being addressed, but it's basically at the committee stages where there have been delays. So I think it's a matter that NAPC has been seized with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We have concluded on our part. I'm not sure if the EA may want to take any other matter we may have fallen short of. Thanks.
The hand of Honorable Suisa. May we hear what is it? Honorable Suisa.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you for another opportunity. You know, Chair, I'm listening to the responses and I'm still not convinced, because the more the responses come from the office of the STP, the more concerns are raised to me. Especially, I'm still going to stick on the estimations that are on the slides and the estimations that were given verbally. Because if the office of the STP knows that we have not yet appointed a contractor for the rebuilding of the old assembly or the refurbishing of the old assembly, it should have been part of the original estimation, so that we don't find ourselves with other estimations or other proposals that they are going to present to National Treasury. And it's a concern, because they knew. It's not like they didn't know. They knew that the contractor has not been appointed for the old assembly. They knew. It should have been part of the original drafting when it was done. As per that, I'm not disputing the processes. I'm not saying the processes were flawed. My problem is what is on the slide and what has been presented verbally. And the reason is because the appointment of the contractor for the old assembly was not yet. They knew that the contractor is not there. So it should have been part of the estimation from the originality. And to me, as a member of parliament and of this committee, it says to me we are busy with poor planning. We are strictly busy with poor planning, whereby there's not proper planning that is happening. It says to me, we don't know what needs to be done in the office of the STP. What are their responsibilities? What needs to be the focus point? Because right now, Parliament is not functioning because of the issue of the rebuilding is taking longer. Now we are speaking about appointment of the assembly, and now they have to go and negotiate with National Treasury to say, because we've only appointed the contractor after we've made the estimations. Can you please address the difference from what we did originally and where we are now? So they can't tell me that they did not know there was not, a contractor was not appointed. They should have made provision from the onset to say that we are supposed to appoint a contractor. We know the estimations. I mean, for argument's sake, in the office of the STP, there is a person that has been appointed as a project manager. He should have given the STP estimation to say that if we are going to appoint the contractor, this is how much you need to estimate that this is how much is going to cost, because that's his or her duty to advise the STP. Because the major issue now, and we should never forget, Chairperson, as to why this committee was actually eventually established, and it was due to the burning of Parliament, and then we were able to also address any other matters from the executive authority. So it should have been a priority to say we are sitting with a crisis that we need to finish the reconstruction. And in our estimation, we have not spoken about the appointment of the contractor of the old assembly. It says to me this is poor planning happened. That is why we are sitting with the 5.1 and 5.8. And I'll wait for that time as to see which one is the National Treasury to go into avoid. But to me, as I'm sitting here, it says to me there was poor planning that was done to make budget allocation for the whole office of the STP and the executive authority. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mpapane.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I wasn't going to come in, but I think we are missing a point somewhere. I think, Honorable Chair, from the onset, we got presentations which was talking about, from the very same beginning, the phases which the reconstruction and refurbishment of Parliament was going to take. So everything was done in phases, and the delays because of the involvement of the Heritage Council. So I don't think where we are now, we should be pointing fingers of saying there are failures somewhere and an inability to advise. What I want to caution us to advise this committee is, if we want to understand this project of rebuilding and refurbishment, maybe we should go back to square one where everything started, so that we can all have a better understanding of where we are. We were given a presentation where we were told that yes, the contractor for the new assembly has been hired. They were finalizing the appointment of the contractor for the old assembly. So that's why I'm saying, Honorable Chair, I'm getting lost as to where we are, because these presentations were made in this committee. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chief Whip. STP, do you want to have a bite?
No, thank you very much. Yeah.
Is there anything that you have not said?
No, the Chairperson, thank you very much. I do think that maybe there will be a need for ongoing update on these matters of the rebuild, especially as the committee has agreed that we must make it a regular update. A budget process follows a particular regime, And that regime is guided by law, and it has got specific prescriptions in which we have to prepare the budget. And our budget is always prepared in that way. We made a reference, Chairperson, that on the 28th of March, we did brief this committee around where things are. We did the same in June. So as at March, we presented that the new assembly contractor has been appointed in December. The old assembly is envisaged to be appointed in June. So if we look at the new assembly, it was appointed in December. And what is December in a financial year? It's almost 7 months in the middle of a financial year from April or so, almost 8 or 9 months. But we could not say in April last year, during the 24-25, we think the figure of the new assembly likely to be appointed in December will be so much. We could not. So the budget we have did not have the new assembly, because at that time we didn't know for certainty how much it would be. Likewise, honorable members, for the old assembly, which has now been appointed as at June 2025, we could not by May say we can estimate that it's going to be so much, because it depends on a number of factors. There's people called quantity surveyors that are appointed by the agent. They determine costs, and once the award is given, then they would say this is the figure in which the contractor has been appointed. And we did exactly what we did to advise National Treasury, the same way we did for the new assembly. Upon appointment, we formally advise and we brief the steering committee, of which Treasury Public Works are part of. We did the same for this one. After appointing, we likewise briefed the committee and submitted to National Treasury. So this will be part of the adjustments that are now given with certainty, that we now have contractors in place that are working side by side to deliver a final parliament building by next year in November. And that's the ongoing part, Chairperson, in terms of budget development process. It remains draft until final figures are appropriated and approved by Parliament. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members, and thanks for the comments and proposals that have been made. I wouldn't want to take the time of the committee, safe to say, Chairperson, maybe between myself and the NCOP Chair, we need to consider seriously the proposal that Honorable Fadroyan has made of a budget forum that would work with us to make sure that the budget of this institution takes care of what are the strategic priorities that we have agreed to. That's all what I can say, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Chair of the NCOP.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think we welcome the comments and the proposals that have been put forth by the members of the committee. As the Speaker has indicated, the matter that was raised by Honorable Van Rooyen, I think it's a matter that we really need to consider and make sure that we do establish that committee, because it is a fact that we might be having insufficient resources for a number of reasons, of course, but at the end of the day, it must not compromise the work that is before us of overseeing the executive and making sure that there is sufficient public participation
And therefore, it would be crucial that in whatever plans that we have, it is accordingly it is funded accordingly. And therefore, I think it's a matter that we will give due consideration as a matter of agency and see how best can we establish such a committee in the manner that will influence the allocation of the budget and possibly, of course, further take it further to say that how then do we apportion that budget to the respective work of committees and that of making sure that the seamless execution of work, both from an administration as well as the political component of the institution, and of course, following up in terms of its expenditure as well. I think we welcome that proposal, which is worth interrogating further. And on the issue of the rebuilding, there has been a proposal quite a number of times, and we've not executed that. I think we'll have to revisit that so that we all have a sense of appreciation as to what is happening in the structures. We see that there is work that is done, and as a matter of fact, it would be proper that we arrange the site visit for the committee so that they appraise themselves of the work that has been done thus far and how does it equate to the gunshot that that has been presented to us. Are we realistic in terms of the timelines and in terms of the budget allocation? Would it meet the set timelines as set by whether the contractor or ourselves? And therefore, it would be important that we have that sense of appreciation as well. Thank you very much, honorable members.
Honorable Co-Chair, Honorable Ndlovu.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think all members have spoken. I'm also joining the executive authority in welcoming the sentiment mentioned by all the members and our speaker, our chairperson of the NCOP, and also the clarity that has been given by the STP and the team. And most importantly, Chair, I think is very much important that we must fast track the site visit. I think that in itself is the one that is going to assist in the whole thing, because all the members, they will be able to now know what exactly and how far are we in terms of the buildings. So I think, Chair, for us, it's one of the key points that we must emphasize. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Cindy and the team. I want to thank you so much for the support that you give to the committee. The committee has been very, very busy, but at no stage did we ever find ourselves experiencing glitches. And for that, you deserve accolades for the manner in which you are coordinating the work of the committee and making sure that the committee does its work efficiently. I want to thank you so much. Let me thank the Honorable Speaker and Honorable Chair of the NCOP. I know, Honorable Speaker, it has been a very busy day today. We are still here at work, and I want to thank you so much for making your time available, including honorable members who are still with us in this meeting at this wicked hour. STP and the team, Speaker, you are leading a team of dedicated civil servants who wants to help us and help the Parliament of South Africa to succeed. And I want to thank your staff for for their humility. You can imagine our committee meets at awkward hours. People go to work 4:30, 5 o'clock, they leave their offices. But they are still here with us and very much vibrant and alive, agile, having to provide answers to the questions that we ask. Members of Parliament, STP, will continue to do their robust work. And it's not that we do not see the direction at which you want to take the administration of Parliament. There was one honorable member who spoke about Parliament of the 21st century, running business of Parliament in the digital era. And we can see that you are agglutinated to that vision and you surely want to achieve it. The report has been presented here, which is a draft. Honorable members have overwhelmingly spoken in favor of it, that it must be noted. We will continue as and when the appropriate time arrives, when allocations would have been made to look at the progress that we are making. And I think that the suggestions that honorable members have made in the meeting, both the speaker and the chair of the NCOP have accepted them and will explore and see how they enhance the work of Parliament and the Joint Standing Committee. Unfortunately, honorable members, we have come to the end of our meeting. I would have loved us to go for another 2 hours. I sympathize with those that have been at work from 8 o'clock today until now. So, and I'm pledging solidarity with you. I was in the examination room today, so I must release you to go and rest, and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.